to Hashtag No Limits. I am your host, Shelley Kino, and Hashtag No Limits is about people that society has placed limits upon, but who have busted through those limits. I believe Ophelia when she said, "We know who we are, but not who we will be." And I believe that to be 100% true, and that there is no better or more beautiful example than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. For those who don't know, the caterpillar literally dissolves into its cells and then reforms into the butterfly. But it's not finished. It still has to struggle in order to get out of its cocoon and for its wings to be able to take it everywhere it's going to go. That can't be easy, but neither can busting through limits that society places on us. And today, my guest, Kyle, is going to talk to us about changing our mindset. And really, his focus is men, but I have a feeling that what he's going to talk about can apply to anybody. So before we bring Kyle on, make sure that you like or subscribe to this channel. We are at episode 195 right now, and episode 200 is coming up in just a few weeks. And on that episode, there will be giveaways of St. Louis Cardinals baseball tickets, Holiday World, what is it called? Holiday World Splashing Safari, I think, in Indiana. And so make sure that you have liked and subscribed so that you do not miss not only that episode, but all the episodes that I bring you. All the episodes are inspiring stories, and I know you're going to be inspired today. So make sure, again, that you like or subscribe. And if you're watching in the replay, give us a hashtag replay and where you're watching from. And if you're watching live, give us a hashtag live and where you're watching from. So, Kyle, are you ready? Welcome,
I absolutely
Kyle.
am.
How are you
those
today?
giveaways sound pretty good. I might tune in for those.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. Both venues are places that my family and I have been and we love. So I hope whoever wins them will enjoy them as well.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah. So tell us about yourself. Who are you? What brings you to hashtag No Limits?
Well, I like that. I like that you have no limits. What brings me to hashtag No Limits is that I believe that we can also live a limitless life. And
awesome.
what I do is I'm a clarity consultant, and how I help folks. And like you mentioned, anyone with words in between their ears, I can work with and get benefit from this. So I work majority with fellas now. And what I do is I help folks clear out the negative narratives, get unstuck and out of their stuck and suck. Celebrate the wins, celebrate progresses, as well as create goals that they are inspired to focus on, that they want to work towards. And folks will come to me with a variety of different stories that are going through their heads that's contributing to resistance and in progression. And by being able to alleviate those negative narratives and turn them into harmful narratives, folks can create and write their own story.
Yeah.
So,
and
actually, for the intro, how it was, how'd that Ophelia quote go again?
We know who we are. Well, actually, the way she says it is, we know what we are, but not what we will become. And I tweak that a little bit to we know who we are and not who we will become.
I'll switch the back end too, and we know who we are, and we write who we will become.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so that's what I do.
That's so true. And a lot of what I do as a special education consultant is I teach about behaviors. And in teaching about behaviors, I am teaching about how we think, how we come to the way that we think, and what all those background factors are that we don't even recognize as being part of what makes us the way that we are in that moment and how we think in that moment. Is that something that you do in your work with people?
Yes. A core component of what I do is to get people to think about their thinking. And is to go through a process of how to think rather than what to think. So how we think is going to influence us. And it could be positive or negative. So the way it goes down is it starts with our words, then it goes into our stories, it influences our breathing, and then from there, it's going to influence our behavior. So if we want to improve our behavior, it's starting at the words, stories, breath. Repeat words, stories, breath. And when we write a narrative that supports us or use a four-step process to alleviate those intense feelings of the past, then we get to open ourselves up to who we believe we can be, rather than running off of the expired narratives we've adopted from others. So when we're kids, we have authority figures around us. And at that point, we're sponges. We're not practicing critical thought when we're kids. We're subconscious beings. We're just absorbing information. And some information could have been helpful at that point in time or throughout our life. However, over time, if we're not thinking about our thinking, then we're not seeing how our present narratives, our present stories, our present way of thinking is accurate or inaccurate. So when we go into thinking about our thinking, we're removing the narratives that no longer serve us.
Yeah, that is so good. And I was going to say that I go a step further, but then you went ahead and you talked about that step further, which is what causes the words that we start with. And it's what I teach about, at least, is our systems of meaning, our cognitive bias, our experiences, what we process in a day. Did you know that we process 74 gigabytes of information every single day?
You know, to add to that too, with that processing, 60,000 of those thoughts are the same that we had yesterday.
Really?
So we have a 60,000
that's a statistic I didn't know.
Yeah. So about 60,000 thoughts per day that are repeating. So if we have 60,000 thoughts that are on repeat, what are the downstream effects of those 60,000 thoughts?
Right. Now, the statistic that I know about is that we have 70,000 thoughts a day. So 60,000 of those are repeats and 10,000 are new.
Yes, that's why if I'm accurate, you can definitely check me on that one. Totally cool.
Yeah, myself as well. Yeah. Please do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the research that I have found. And that 74 gigabytes of information is like watching 16 movies every single day.
Wow. That's cool. That really puts it, when you put an image to it, that's like, that's cool.
Yeah. And if you think about that, there's no way that we could actually watch 16 movies a day, because the average movie is an hour and a half to 2 hours long. So you would have to stay awake 24 hours a day to watch the hour and a half movies, 16 of them. And you couldn't do it if they were 2 hours long. So yeah, that is mind blowing to me that we process that information. And yeah, all of that background stuff, as you mentioned, is what causes us to be who we are in that moment. But guess what? In the next moment, we might be somebody different a little bit. Would you agree?
Totally. And instead of causes, I would say inspires, because it's not like our emotions are holding a gun to our head, forcing us to do specific things. It's inspiring us to behave a certain way.
Well, I like
and we choose to behave in one way or the other.
Right. Yeah. And so I think too, another way is, and I've heard this terminology a lot, is intentional. You know, if we're intentional about thinking about what we're thinking, if we're intentional about our actions, if we try to be intentional and be proactive rather than reactive. I mean, obviously there are situations that we cannot be proactive to everything, but we can, in a lot of situations, be proactive rather than always being reactive. So what kind of things, when I say stuff like that, what does that sort of make your brain do?
The key word that you said that got the feels going was intention. And the way I like to think of intention, if you ever want to understand someone's behavior, try to understand the intention. Intention comes before the use. So for example, someone can view one thing as evil while another person can view it as good. And that's just a matter of perception. It's not the tool itself that is positive or negative. It's the individual's intention behind the use of the tool that makes it positive or negative, or makes the tool completely useless. So if I was hanging out at the registry and I had a hammer up to my ear, using it as a phone, that is improper use of a tool. And then the hammer can have a positive intention to build or a negative intention to destroy. It depends on the participant and the user. So I think that when we think of our intentions behind the specific thing, then we can actually, we can figure out if those intentions are in alignment with the person that we want to be and the person that we want to bring to the table, to the game of life.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I talk about frequently is the fact that behavior is communication, and not only is it communicating something from us, but other people's behavior is also communicating something, and so understanding that intent. And so often I find, because I work in the world of special education and I work a lot with students with behaviors, big unwanted behaviors, that oftentimes the adults, whomever that may be, the teachers, the staff at a school, the staff at a store, the parents, the family members, assume the intent is malicious. And they assume the intent is that the child has 100% control over that behavior that they're exhibiting in that moment. So what do you say to that?
That would be, so like what you said, behaviors show it's information, right? So then if we're going with the behavior being the second consequence, what's the first principle? What's the root of that? So let's say, and I'm just theorizing, this is just me plopping things out of my mind that make sense. If there is unruly behavior, and let's say a kiddo had a negligent or rejecting parent, that they have learned through the parent's behavior that is the way that they source attention. So they haven't been taught otherwise. So there's no difference. There's no difference reference. It's only one reference until the other reference is introduced. And it's like, oh, there's an alternate path for me to receive what I want. And it's more of a positive cycle. So it introduces, so I think of them as like catalyst characters. An individual can be a catalyzing character to pivot the trajectory of someone's life. And so when I think of how, like, if I'm feeling a way where I want a particular feeling, oftentimes the very feeling I want is the feeling or the thing I am not giving the most. So it's an interesting little twist where if someone's feeling avoidant, many times the folks that are feeling avoidant want connection.
Okay.
And so if we're able to introduce it in a way where someone is, through our behavior, where there is that positive connection, or we're showing up as we wish to be cared for and loved, then it introduces an alternate frame. Because our behavior is also information training other people on how to behave around us.
Yes, I would agree with that.
That's my thought on that one. Yeah.
I like how you're like, I think that, yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah, I want to double check it because it was fun. I was seeing where I was connecting the things, and I was like, okay, let's flow with that. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so I mentioned at the onset that, you mostly work with men, and you said that too. You mostly work with the fellas now. But when you're working with the men and anybody else, like you said, if they have words between their ears, you can work with them. So what does it look like to work with you?
Ooh, so what's it look like to work with me? One thing I'll put as well, the difference between when I'm working with a lady in contrast to when I'm working with a fella, my intention is to go through the frame of love for the ladies, more of the emotional feels, and then towards respect and thus self-respect for fellas.
Okay. Can you explain why you do those differently?
Yeah, of course. So with being able to, with the ladies, working with field is something that connects easier. So it's being able to go into the stories and understanding how the feels will flow, because ladies just are more intuitive with their emotions. So if I say, describe your emotions or describe the emotions that you feel after this read. And then they'll be able to like freaking spitfire.
Right.
And then, and then when I work with fellas, they're basing it more from an analytical approach. So it is a little bit tougher to pull it out. They'll describe the overall emotion, like the feel, and not so much the detail of the emotion. And the reason as to why I go with respect for fellas is because when we are doing good, we receive good. And there's a story for this one where back in World War II, they were down folks that were in, I think it was the UK, it was after the bombings, and they didn't have anyone to transport medical supplies or food. So they had to go into some asylums, and there was some fellas that were bedridden, depressed for months or years, and they did not move. They were just in it. And so, well, they had no choice but to get to work because they were down on folks. And what they observed with these fellas, because they would still go to their sessions and stuff, is that all their symptoms of the depression went away because they felt a purpose. They felt admired and supported in what they were doing, and they were seeing the positive contribution that they were bringing to their community. And so we can remove from, and so that's why a core point why I go with respect with fellas, because most of our systems, there's less support for fellas than there is for ladies. And the support for the ladies, if it goes through the frame of the emotion and describing the feels rather than going through the processing of the emotion. Because the processing of emotion introduces the emotions to fellas, however, put into a set and setting where they can have the analytical brain with it.
That's wonderful. That's thank you so much for describing that. Okay, so now you've said you work differently with men and women depending on the perspective. Okay, so then how then does work with you look like?
The work looks like, well, let's break it down. So the work looks like, well, I'll just break it down what a session looks like because it's going to be so much easier. So in a nutshell, go into a session, there's a vibe check. We just get to see how things are going. Then we go into a breathwork session. So we do 10 to 15 minutes of breathing, and the breath is the language of the body. When we're breathing high and tight, we're good to fight. When we're breathing low and slow, we're good to flow. And so we get into that state. And the reason why I use breathwork is because head-heavy practices don't incorporate the body and the breath. And I think that that's a missing link, because if it's only head-heavy, then we're not getting the body involved. And that's where we store our emotions or our stories that are past experiences that are now in our body as unmetabolized emotions. They haven't been processed. So even if we're addressing a past memory and we're speaking to someone about it, it's not changing the feeling. So folks can go to a practitioner of some sort and feel the same way 10 years through the practice and not see or experience the change and the development and being able to go through it. And then after that, and the reason for the breath work is to down regulate someone. So get them nice and chill, nice and zen. The way I like to put it is we get high off our own supply of oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And that one puts us in
I like all
spot.
the little rhymes that you have.
Yeah, it helps me remember. Honestly, it just flows. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I can remember stuff. This is awesome. And then the rest of the session, this is the core part, that's where we go into stories and we go into experiences. And for the first chunk, we go into stories that are ouchy stories that hurt, haunt, taunt, annoy. Then we move on from there to celebrating the wins, celebrating progress, celebrating ourselves, because we suck at taking a compliment, or many folks suck at taking a compliment, and is a skill that I think is important to practice. Mm-hmm. And we get to celebrate ourselves. And then from there, when we decluttered the mind, made more space to throw the party, we filled it up with undeniable stacks of proof that we are who we say we are. And then we create goals and outcomes that we're excited to work towards.
That's awesome. So there's a group that I belong to, and it's called Women Empowering Women. And one of the things that happens at almost every meeting that we have is it's called our SOS sessions. And it stands
Cool.
for share our strengths or successes and share our struggles. And the reason the founder started doing these at every session is because early on in her starting of this organization, she had a woman come and speak, and that woman asked the audience to share their successes. And nobody spoke up. Everyone just, like you said, we don't take compliments well, but women, I think more than men, and maybe not, have a difficult time saying something and saying, hey, I did this, or this happened to me and this is exciting. And so that kind of goes along with what you said of the just being able to go, I did something good. It's okay to pat myself on the back, and it's okay. I'm not tooting my own horn, as the saying goes, but it does something to my own mental health when I say, oh, I landed this big job, or man, I solved this problem, or you know what? I went through a whole day without yelling at my kids, whatever the success is. Yeah. I mean, for some people, it is, I mean, on some days, it's just, I got through the day and that's my success. And I think it's important that we do that for ourselves on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so I appreciate what you said that like you do in your time. So is this basically like an hour long every time someone works with you, or does it kind of
about 75 minutes? Yeah.
75 minutes. Okay.
75 minutes and hard stop at 90. And if I don't have a timer, we can go for a while because it's when people are writing or reading, they're only focusing on that thing. We can't be, it's difficult to write about a story while thinking about something else. So a side effect of presence is being in flow. And a side effect of flow is a lapse in time where 30 minutes flies by and it feels like 10. So that's something that's pretty cool. So I have an alarm set for 75 as a warning. And then if we need a little 15-minute wiggle room, then we got it.
Yeah, I just had my guest last week. He was talking about music, but he also mentioned flow state. And I asked him to describe flow state because, there's a lot of people who wouldn't understand that. And so it's interesting that you both bring that up in back-to-back episodes of #No Limits. So I'm thinking that flow is pretty important to people's lives. And I found it interesting that when you were talking about and now I forgot the little saying that you said, but like the high and tight, ready to fight, and the
low and slow,
good to flow. That you like, is that literally when you're saying like our breath is up here versus in our stomach? Is that literally what you meant?
Totally. Because if think of a moment in time when you felt threatened, and then where are you holding your breath? Some people, and then they're taking less breaths, or they're panic attacks. That's not a deep breath. Hell no.
Right.
That's why it's forcing that breath in and being able to bring it down low and slow. And it's to be able to create space in between stimulus and response or reaction. So that breath gives us an opportunity to be able to, the thing happens, stimulus, take a breath. How do I want to respond? And Viktor Frankl, the fellow that wrote Man's Search for Meaning, says that in between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in this space, we can choose the response. So it's delaying it. And we can only choose a response while being present in it, even if it's a stressful state, because we can also stress test ourselves to be calm in stressful situations. Yep.
Right. And I think that's where that proactive mindset comes from that I mentioned before, because again, like I said, we can't be aware and be practicing for every situation that might happen. But if you're in a situation where, for example, like I said, I work with a lot of kiddos that have big unwanted behaviors, just the fact that we can remain calm, like, okay, like you just said, you take that breath and you don't instantly respond. And, we kind of evaluate the situation. But so often, if something big happens, we automatically give a big response without taking that half second or second. And sometimes it feels like you can't because of how big the action of someone else is. But just even practicing like, okay, I've got to remain calm. Mm-hmm. How do I remain calm when someone else is exploding? And so do you teach people, or do you help them figure out, I should say, because I'm sure you're not teaching them. I'm sure it's a lot of like self-discovery, what to do in that situation when it feels like the world is exploding right in front of that person. How do they react? How do they be proactive in that situation?
Ooh, that's a cool question. The first thing I would actually go with is it a consistent thing? Like, is there a comment? Is there a consistency in whatever that thing is that gets you riled up? Because then if there's something that's like it's repetitive, then we have enough information in order to figure out a way to pivot the trajectory. And the thing that is the most important with my work is that it does not focus on the projection onto the external world. It focuses on the reflection on how the individual wishes to show up in any moment in time. Because I think that we can when we have the awareness of a particular thing that we want to change, then we visit how someone is behaving in those moments. So are they behaving in a way that they don't want to do? Do they want to pivot their behavior? I get so frustrated when this happens. Okay, so what's the side effect of that? What happens whenever you get like frustrated from that? Oh, well, this happens, this happens, this happens. Oh, okay, cool. So what would you want to happen? Oh, well, I'd want this, this, and this. Do you have control of that? No. Okay, so what do you have control of? And ultimately, our behavior is the thing that we have the most control of. And so when we're reflecting on how an individual can show up differently, then it helps as well. Because the way that I frame it as well is if I'm in a situation where it's undesirable, like let's say someone wants to like come at me for whatever reason, and if it's verbal, then there has to be at least one adult in the conversation. And so if I'm able to keep my composure and keep myself compassionate, if I'm able to stay silent and listen has the same letters.
Yes, it does.
Then I'm able to have a bigger awareness as to why they're doing what they're doing. And questions pull, statements push. Oh, rather than saying, yo, you're being a dick. Hey, why is it that you're feeling this way? What do you find it? This could be one that would get you hit in the face, but whatever. It would be, you think your behavior is appropriate right now?
Right?
Maybe not that one. However, like a different one. It's just inquiring and seeing why the person's doing the thing that they're doing. Then you understand the intentionality behind it. And I also think that if someone's reacting, they're taking what someone else could be saying as fact, and they're not listening to the words, they're receiving an attack. And if someone if the external world is capable of influencing someone's feeling, then they are not in control of their life. Other things are in control of their life. So the calmer an individual, actually, I got a story for this one. It was with a monk. This is not my own story, but there was a monk that would travel from town to town, and he would just talk to the villagers. And there's this one town in particular that he went to. He's sitting under the tree. He had a whole grouping of individuals around him chilling, and he's just dropping some knowledge bombs. And then this one person came up out of the crew and said, "Who are you to tell us all of this? You're just as dumb as the rest of us." Just livid. And the monk responded, "If you were to purchase a gift for someone and give it to them and they rejected it, who's the owner of the gift?" And then the angry villager said, "Well, I would be the owner of the gift, obviously." And the monk responded, "Your anger is the gift that you're trying to give me. I reject it."
Wow.
Because we have to make the choice to receive what is happening. We can inquire and explore our curiosity and see why. However, we don't have to allow it within us, because we ultimately are the narrators of our identity, of our mindset. And the definition for mindset is the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves or our opinion of ourselves. So another person's opinion may not match with yours. However, who is more accurate in their statements?
Yes. Well, and I say yes, but at the same time, we have to be careful because of those words between our ears and having poor mindsets sometimes, that we don't think enough of ourselves. I feel like I walk into a lot of people's lives that don't feel good enough about themselves. And so I did want to acknowledge, we have Fran watching from Southern Illinois, and she said howdy, and she says that she really liked that comment about silent and listen being of the same letters, and you just have to turn them around a little bit. So yeah, what you said before about you might get hit if you ask the question, like, is that really the right behavior right now? I did a long-term sub position after I stopped teaching full time. And it was a middle school classroom, and I had never taught middle school, the whole class. I had done special education, so I had never done a gen ed middle school. And when I say a long-term sub, it was like 1 day or 2 days a week, because the teacher was out for treatments for cancer. And I didn't realize that I said it, but apparently I would often say after someone's behavior, was that absolutely necessary? And the reason that I realized I was doing it is because one day, I don't know how many weeks I had been there, and a student had a behavior and another student said, was that absolutely necessary? And I was like, oh, well, I guess that's good. You're listening.
I love it.
But it did. I think it must have helped kind of, made them think a little bit. And that was my intention, but I didn't really, I guess I kind of didn't expect them to get it. I don't know, but it struck me as funny when the one student said that to the other, and I was like, okay.
Nice.
You are listening. So that's a good thing. Yeah. Oh, that's so much good in what you just said. But like I said, I do, I absolutely believe that our opinions of ourselves is much more important. And but at the same time, I believe we have to have the right opinion of ourselves, because we do have some people who think too highly of themselves. And then we have, I feel, many more people who think too lowly of themselves. And there doesn't seem to be a good number of people in the middle that do kind of, like my own self-worth. I believe, I am not perfect. I will make mistakes, but by the grace of God, I continue to go on every day. And, I'm doing the best that I can every single day. And I'm proud of that. I feel like the Lord helps me every single day get through. And because of him, I feel pretty darn good about myself, but I also know that I'm not the be all to end all person, and shouldn't be the be all to end all person to any other person either. And I think that, there's, I don't know. I think that's a healthy mindset and a healthy self-esteem. What is your opinion?
Well, I think, I think I got something good. Something's stewing in there. Something's stewing in here. I think that's something that's tough, is that no one can read minds, so it's impossible to understand someone's internal narrative without them sharing it or writing it out for you. So in saying that, because you said that some folks think very highly of themselves, however, then the questions would be, are they thinking highly of themselves because they don't have, are they projecting their opinion that they think highly of themselves, or are they trying to get other people to think highly of them so that they feel a sense of attention or a sense of recognition, a counter to rejection? It's a feeling of acceptance. So I think that from an individual standpoint, I think that there's less people that practice a well-worded narrative architecture in their mind, because I believe that many folks are told how to think rather than taught how to think about their thinking. And so what I see from a zoomed out section is that courage is not encouraged. Fear is encouraged. So many people think fearfully because it's just the narratives that have been adopted. And so I think that that's a component as to people could be. So I would put it in this way, where I used to not share how good I was feeling because I didn't want to remind people or remind another person of how good they don't have it, or something along those lines, even though that I felt celebratory. And it's because because collaboration being the route to elevation, if there's not if your fellowship, if the people you make space for is not supporting that, then it's not going to help. And so I would have considered myself back in the day like a closeted abundant person, a closeted happy person, because being happy is weird.
Right.
And so people may have positive internal narratives, however, will push that down in order to fit in because of a fear of rejection for feeling good. That was at least my thought process on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a brilliant way to say it. And I think about our social media world and our, just even in general, when you just talk to the neighbor or your coworker, you don't really talk about, hey man, that was really awesome that you did, you got that project completed ahead of schedule. You might say that once, but then it seems like the majority of what we discuss in person or online or through social media is negative stuff. And so many people do seem, I've noticed this more, I think, in the last 10 or 12 years. And I don't know if that's my age that has helped me notice that, or just my kind of different mindset has changed around that same time. But I stopped watching television and the news specifically several years ago. And it was probably 8 or 10 years ago. And I really don't do a lot with social media. I mean, I put things out there for my business. And honestly, I put out a daily scripture for those who are on my personal friends list. And I'm just a happier person, I think, because I'm not listening to all the horrible things that I have no control over changing, but are happening supposedly around me. And, I live in a very nice community. We don't have many crime. I mean, our crime statistic it's a very, very small community. We have 1,200 people in my town. So when I'm talking small, I mean, that's like subdivisions or apartment complexes in big cities. But because I don't engage in all of that stuff, I can talk to people about happier things, but it's so weird because the conversations are much shorter. It seems like if you talk negative things, you can just go on and on and on and on. But people are, as you mentioned, uncomfortable being happy. And so 2 things. So Fran says she errs on the low end of that self-esteem and that she spends her day encouraging others. So I just wanted to bring those out. I find it very interesting that for whatever reason, we tend to be drawn more to negative, which I honestly think is why the news focuses on the negative, because in order to get their viewers, they have to draw people in. And when we talk about a lot of happy things, it doesn't seem to have the same effect.
Totally. They'll actually, I watched this, it was like a secretly recorded one that was leaked out. And it was he was in the news, like organizing stuff. And he was explaining that, I forget who the fellow was. And he was explaining that they purposefully put the happy section of the news, like at the end of their day. They'll have the happy section where they're going through like, oh my gosh, this is like a cute rabbit or amazing, like this, that, the other. And they purposefully put it at the end so that people don't feel crappy and they're more likely to come back the next day. So it leaves on a positive end in order to work as a cliffhanger to bring people back and work through all that fear for that little segment of happiness. So it's interesting. I think that also ties to intentionality too, because what is the intention behind the consumption of these words? When we're choosing, this is just us consuming. And if we look at these words as like sugars and fats, and we're consuming, it's not going to help us very, very well. If it's pints of ice cream while we're dipping chips in it.
Yeah. Interesting analogy.
Yeah. We're just really like getting ourselves greased up, Yeah. So I think the intention, because I have a similar intention where I break things down where I remove distractions. And if I only want to be a part of problems that I am actively participating in the processing of. And so that is my filter for figuring out what is a focus and what is a distraction. And this is me being intentional about my word consumption because I want to have a vision happen. And if my words and my narratives and my stories aren't supporting that, then it's not going to be helpful. Remove distractions, and then you can create better decisions. There's more focus, there's more direction. So if we're removing, like you said, the news, which I think would be a great one, or another thing too is we train our social media algorithms to show us more stuff. So if we're training our algorithm to see stuff that discourages us, that inspires us to feel a sense of dread, that encourages fear, then we're training our algorithms to support what we are wanting to see. And it may not intentionally be wanting, but it's just simply the thing that we've trained it to produce to us. So then that's the intention of why is it that I'm using this thing? Why am I using this tool that is neither positive nor negative? And am I using it for benevolence or maliciousness?
Yeah.
And the only person that's going to affect is in here.
Right. Yeah, that's so true about the algorithms. I've never been a cat person, but a couple of years ago, my daughter got a cat. And then earlier this year, well, I guess it was the middle of last year, she got another cat. And so now I'm one of those people who watches the cat videos all the time. And then I send them to her. I'm like, oh, look at this one. Oh, look at this one. But I also love dogs. And so I watch the dog ones, and so absolutely I'm getting more kitty cat and more dog and puppy type of things, showing up in my social media threads. And yeah, that's so much better than, focusing on, oh, there was this negative thing or there was that negative thing and spending too much time with those things and having more and more of that appear. And so I speaking of social media, I am trying to, you have so many social media that I could not put them all into one quick blurb. So we've got you on TikTok at Dapper Dude Kyle.
Yes. And all my social media handles are Dapper Dude Kyle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you've got your podcast, which is Limitless Life with Kyle Smith. Yeah. LinkedIn is Clarity-Consultant, and X is the Dapper Dude Kyle. And then I had to do these in 3 segments.
Oh my
and
goodness.
Then your Instagram is Dapper Dude Kyle, Threads is at Dapper Dude Kyle, and Facebook is Kyle Smith Trainer. And then I do want to, so you're everywhere when it comes to social media. Absolutely. I did want to, scrolling across the bottom of the screen is your website. would there be any reason that you would want to highlight anything on your website right now? I can share that with the audience if you would like me to. And while you're thinking of that, I'm going to say what the website is. It is clarityconsultant.ca, and that's Clarity, CLARITY, consultant, CONSULTANT.ca. So now you've had a second to think about it. Is there anything on the website that you would like me to pull up and show?
Nothing comes to mind. The website is great for anyone that wants to have information on what I do and how I do it.
Okay, perfect. Mm-hmm. And with all of that social media that you have, what do you put out there? Let me just put it that way.
Oh, fair enough. One, podcast interviews. So those. And then also written stuff. I'll do some writing stuff, and I'm doing my YouTube is going to be something that I'm focusing on a majority this year, where it's going to be a lot more video content. So dialing in my writing, then I'm just going into videos, and through there, I'm just going to go through different practices, refined tangents, not just
I like that.
flow.
Right?
Just a slight smidge of tangent. My YouTube videos are going to be they're going to be more conversational. They're going to be casual. They're not going to be as like highly edited. They're going to be super chill. It's going to be a simple conversation. And I go through the victim mentality, how to translate words from harmful to helpful, introducing different ways of thinking about similar things. So what is the end point of this word and that word, or the difference between different things?
Okay, awesome. So I have to ask you about something that you shared in your podcast, or in our podcast form. I asked you if there were any fun facts about yourself, and I have to believe that you have to have one heck of a serious mindset and will of mind to do a 24-hour obstacle race. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I would actually say at that time, I did not have the mindset to support the race, and I purposefully did it to suffer. Yep. Because at that point in time, I did not have a very high opinion of myself. My mindset, my opinion of myself, the stories I told myself about myself, they were not harmful. I didn't like the character I was embodying. I didn't have much patience, respect, compassion, and agitation towards myself. And I didn't like any of those. And all of those build up. I didn't have a practice that flushed it out. And so I went in to that 24-hour race with the intention of, well, now I have a better way of putting it, where I break down the body in order to build up the mind. So to create space, to be able to think, to be able to breathe. And so when I was out in the middle of the Las Vegas desert, hanging out by myself after doing X amount of hours of walking and some obstacles, it pushed all that agitation, that anxiety, I would say aggression as well, judgment, because at that point in time, there's no such thing as judgment.
Sure.
It was just raw. And so I purposefully did it to work as a misogi. So a misogi is a challenge that you can survive. However, it pushes you very far out of your comfort zone. And I didn't learn about the term misogi until later. It ended up being a rite of passage for me. Yeah. And that was the first time that I ever did an event that long before. I was just moving.
I can't even imagine were you in the desert the whole 24 hours? Yeah.
It was pretty toasty at day, and it was cold at night. And then I did a cliff jump at midnight.
Really?
Yeah. That out of the whole race, that was a moment that stands out is that one where it was a 40-foot cliff jump, and they just called it the cliff. And it just went into it went into water. It wasn't a man-made obstacle. They built the obstacle using the terrain. And what they did is that they would open up different obstacles at different times to prevent people from bunching up. Mm-hmm. And so they opened this one at midnight. So we started at around 11, 12. So I already did a couple of laps, and here I am eyeballing this thing. I'm like, okay, when do you go? And the moment I got to it, I was going, and I was like, I wonder if I just made the threshold so I didn't have to do it. Did not. And if I didn't do it, then there's a 1/4-mile penalty loop, and I didn't want to walk it. And on the other side of the water, I could see the finish line. So I could cut a whole chunk of this this course off and go right through to be able to get there. So I had a couple things inspiring me to get there. And then I went out there, and I was, at least in my mind, I felt like it was 10 hours. But for me, it was probably about 5 minutes in reality. And I've never done a cliff jump this high before. It was freaky. And all I could see is just everything. It was on a high spot. So it's just whoa. And they had the lights, and I decided to not think and simply do. It was my thoughts that were getting in the way of me doing the thing. So I just stepped forward, and then I went and I tucked myself in nice and tight. And the craziest thing was, and I remember so vividly, where I had my eyes closed, and I had enough time in my brain to say, I should have hit the water already. And then hit the water. And I came up, I'm like, oh, I'm still alive. Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So oh my gosh.
It's gnarly. I have the big right there too.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I can't swim. So that definitely would be a no-no for me. But I can't imagine doing that at midnight. It's pitch dark. You're out in the middle of the desert. Now, I know you said that you saw lights, but I'm guessing those lights were distance away, not that wasn't like the water was all lit up and you could see exactly where.
The water was lit.
Yeah, it was. Okay.
They had boats there just in case. So they lit it up to the best of their ability. So
sure,
take that however. It was lit up enough that I didn't think I was going to. No, I definitely thought I was going to drown. It was lit up enough.
Yeah, that would be. I would, if it was allowed. If I was going to do it, I would have to do it with a life vest on, because and even then, I'm not sure that I would be able to pass that point in my brain in order to be able to do that. So kudos to you, and mad respect, because I like I said, the amount of mental strength that you had to exercise during that time just has to be incredible. And that, yeah.
I'll receive it. I appreciate it. I think it was stubbornness as well. Yeah.
That's mental strength. I think
fair.
That's mental strength.
I'll go with that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it's also stubbornness at some degrees, I believe, is also willpower. Fair.
Good point.
So, yeah. Well, Kyle, this has flown by, and so we must have been in flow state. But I do want to just give you, we have just a few more minutes. So if there is anything that you had wanted to cover that we haven't covered, now would be the time to do that.
Let's see. Well, we talked about the sciencey stuff. We talked about psychology stuff. Let's go with some magic. Let's talk about magic and the magic of words. So let's start with a fun one. Abracadabra. When I say abracadabra, what do you think of?
Poof. Something's going to happen.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, I've gotten a couple cool answers like magicians. I've gotten Pokemon. I've also gotten Steve Miller Band. And And so abracadabra is an ancient language, is Aramaic, 3,000-year-old language, same language that Jesus spoke. And abracadabra, translated to English, is with my words I create. So we create the reality that we perceive with the words that we have floating around in our head. And if we look at the definition of a spell is a word or a collection of words of great influence. So with my words, I create with great influence. So magic is simply just the way that we use words. And we would perceive words as magic because there was very few of us back in the day that could or had the accessibility to knowledge. And so these folks that were shamans, they were clergymen, they would hold the knowledge of whatever the tribe was, while the other folks would go hunting and gathering. And so there would be these guides that are in the tribes that are somehow delivering or somehow sending messages to another tribe, and then they're receiving information for us to be able to do the thing. People that wouldn't know any better would be like, oh my gosh, that's magic. How are they doing that? Nowadays, we just know those as letters.
Right.
And so, that's how something that is, because we've been creating stories and narratives since the Paleolithic era. Stories and storytelling and writing has been something that has evolved over time. And I believe that because we're at a point where we have so many words in front of us, we have a great power that we don't use responsibly. So our words can influence the reality we're perceiving. And then when we program our internal dialogue, our narrative architecture, then our reticular activating system, now we're going into neurology, the reticular activating system, the RAS, is going to subconsciously look for evidence to support our internal narratives. So that's what's bringing the information. And it could be the same, like, objective external world where nothing changes. Rather, it's our perception, it's our frame, it's our narratives, it's our stories, it's our words. Those are the things that are going to influence how we see the world and how we see ourselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there are biblical scriptures too that talk about the fact of how much power the tongue has. You know, a little tiny rudder can change the direction of a ship, but nobody can tame the tongue, and that the tongue has the ability to bring life or death, and totally. we choose which way it is. So I really appreciate that. So thank you again so much for being my guest today. And I so much appreciate everything that you're doing. So remember, look up Clarity Consultant and Kyle Smith, and you will find some amazing things, I think, because having this hour with him has flown by, and I have learned a great deal myself, and I very much appreciate that. So I also just want to remind you all to make sure that you like or subscribe. We do have episode 200 coming up on April the 1st, and we will be giving away St. Louis Cardinals baseball tickets for St. Louis, Missouri, and Holiday World Splash and Safari in Holiday World Holiday World, Indiana, now I'm lost. Santa Claus, Indiana. That's the name of the town that it's in. So make sure that you subscribe so you do not miss an episode, but you definitely don't want to miss that episode. Thank you to everyone who participated today and who will participate in the replay. I so much appreciate everyone, and all of you that are out there. Remember, you know who you are, but not who you will be. So make sure you keep trying to be that butterfly. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Hey, parents and teachers, are you tired of IEP meetings that feel like a battle? Let's put an end to the tension and create a collaborative, calm, and respectful environment together. Shelley Keno, your go-to IEP consultant, can transform your meetings into positive and productive experiences. With Shelley Keno, your child is her top priority, your voice is heard, and you become confident. Shelley Keno is making the world better for all, one IEP at a time. Visit www.shelleykeno.com for more information and set up your free 20-minute consultation today. That's shelleykeno.com, SHELLEYKENOW.